it sounds like the audience, and I know this audience well, is really good at going from 0 to 60 and staying in high performance and overproduction and overworking. But you don't get faster, stronger, or better without refilling the tank.
In this episode of the podcast, I speak with the wonderful Jill Miller, who is an incredible author and wellness expert. She is the mastermind behind two groundbreaking books, Body by Breath and The Role Model. Without sounding too sycophantic in this, the work that Jill has done has become a key resource in everything I do, and you'll hear me implore you to get the book, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Get Body by Breath. It's fantastic insight into how to introduce breath work into your life. The website that Jill mentions at the end of this, which is if you're basically looking to be able to get this book in the EU and you're struggling to do so, is blackwells.co.uk. And without further ado, here is the wonderful Jill Miller. Jill, welcome to the show. I just want to start by saying thank you for writing Body by Breath. It's like so quickly become such a key reference. And if you look over just there, you'll see it it's like at the top of the pile, ready to draw as a reference point, because like I love it. And it's I found it such a useful resource to have in my life, both for my clients and for myself. So like, first of all, thank you massively for writing such an important resource for me.
Thank you for receiving the work inside of it. You know, writing a book is like birthing a child. You just don't know who the book will become once it's touched, once it's invited into homes, once it is trying to make meaning for other people. And so just the fact that it's at the top of your shelf as a quick grab, and it's a heavy grab, is so moving for me as an author. And it's very, very gratifying to see that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, my absolute pleasure. And I mean it 100% sincerely. It must be an interesting process putting down something in a world where you kind of Instagram posts are never seen again after 24 hours and social media just goes, and then putting something physically out there where the words will be maybe not scrutinized but passed through the lens of so many people. That must be a kind of a daunting step, or a considered step.
Yes, that would be a correct analysis. Like, it is absolutely terrifying to recognize that, first of all, that's 480 pages. We cut about 360 pages 1 year ago, right about now. So there were actually amazing testimonial stories from people whose lives have been transformed by applying this method. And my publishers said, we got to get rid of all the testimonials. We saved two. There's actually two in there, the foreword. And then there is one of the testimonials about long COVID, COVID/long COVID, because I just felt it was just way too relevant and important of a topic, and it was coming from a clinician's experience. I was like, let's keep that in. But to illuminate your question, you know, Instagram is short form, relatively short form, and now we have Threads, which is even shorter form. You know, I don't think in short, I think in epochs. I think in like 1,000-year intervals. So a book is long form thinking, trying to thread multiple themes coherently for the attention of a reader or a group of readers or what have you. And you just wonder, with the salience of Instagram, if people will have the attention span to want to dive in. And books are suffering as a whole. I mean, they've gone digital, and that's a whole other experience. My book is digital. It's on Kindle. I don't have a Kindle. I'm a textbook person. I love big, heavy, unwieldy, hard to find textbooks. So I just haven't gone to the Kindle yet. I'd like to. I keep saying I'm going to get the Kindle so I can actually see what my book looks like. But I'm very gratified by the number of folks like yourself, especially coaches, practitioners, and clinicians who are still very, very comfortable making their way through paper to be able to process, their own learning But I did make a book that walks off the page also. I mean, I understand how interactive learning is very, very helpful for most bodies. Like, we're not all just visual learners. We are also kinesthetic learners. We're also auditory learners. And so there are a lot of QR codes in the book to help on-ramp and off-ramp people. So if you're reading a page and you're like, oh my God, this is like really heady, I'm like, let's get into our bodies now. Here's a QR code. Here, let's practice these concepts so that they mean something to you. And then you can get back to the reading again.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I was going to say that I really enjoyed that element of it too. The fact that it was practical, and the fact that I can use it as, without sounding too arrogant, someone who's fairly well educated in this domain and still learn an absolute ton from it, but still have that practical element too. It's a really nice blend. So yeah, nailed it. Can you describe the journey that you took to get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm going to dedicate however many years of writing out, like thousands of hours, like, because it's such a commitment. It's so daunting. Like we said, there must come a point where it's like, oh man, I've got to do this. Tim Ferriss said something like, the only reason to write a book is if it's more painful not to write it. So like, what was the point where you decided to go, okay, this is becoming a thing?
Oh, I love that quote. Yeah, this is one of those things that just eats you up alive. It's all I think about. It is obviously a massive obsession of mine. And just to frame for the folks, like, what are you guys even talking about? The book Body by Breath, the science and practice of physical and emotional resilience, is a body-based book that takes into account the impact that breathing has on multiple systems of your body. And it's not a nose to lungs tour of breathing. It's very much inclusive of lots of different interesting topics. So elements of the book were written over 20 years ago. The formal book writing started 8 years before publishing. I signed the contract with Victory Belt, my publisher, while I was pregnant with my almost 7-year-old son. So it was about an 8-year journey from contract signing to publication. And that 8 years was extremely difficult for me to get everything together. I had a course manual for a course I taught called the Breath and Bliss Immersion. And I also had a course manual for another course I taught called the Core Integration Immersion. And the book represents kind of a mashup of some of the elements that were in those course manuals. But when I started researching my thesis, I started getting pulled in a lot of different and novel directions, and knew that I had to be able to very concretely isolate certain threads that I wanted to. So it wasn't just like, it wasn't simple. Let's put it that way. I also, during that 8-year time frame, had a total hip replacement. I also had my second child, and book writing while raising an infant, toddler, etc., plus having a total hip replacement, and already having another toddler, was impossible while also running my business. So I had a significant number of writer's block moments within that 8 years. And then the pandemic hit. When the pandemic hit, we had to pivot our business because there were so many obstacles to finishing a book about resiliency. Just irony is not lost on me that I'm trying to put this book out about resiliency while I'm succumbing to so many challenges in my personal and professional life. And what happened was, early on in the pandemic, one of the folks who worked for the publisher, Glenn Cordoza, who was also instrumental in helping me with my first book, The Role Model, with the same publisher, Victory Belt. He gave me a call one day, and I'm already 6 years past due on the deadline of the book. And he's like, "Hey, how's it going? How's book writing going?" And I just basically fall to my knees, start crying and say, "I don't know a path forward. I don't know how to finish it. I don't know what to do. I'm so stuck." And he's like, "Let's hash out a plan." And so he helped me hash out a plan, and I was able to get back on board and make this thing what it is today.
Great.
So I needed a life raft. And that's what he did. He threw out a little tugboat, and I was able to row myself back to shore. Pretty amazing.
Well,
And
I feel like that's one of the things that very much comes through, which is the fact that you're not the equivalent of, I don't know, Jocko Willink, who seems to have a very kind of like this kind of ingrained pattern of like, this is who I am, and like it's unwavering of like this resilience. You like, from your story that you tell at the beginning of the book, it's clear that you've had to work on this, you've had to develop these tools yourself, and that's why I found it so applicable for me and then for my clients too. Absolutely.
I mean, the generation story of this book is healing via the body, using some of the incredible nuanced mechanics of breathing to be able to self-regulate, to be able to adjust autonomic state and ride with my anxiety instead of become destroyed and enveloped and decimated by it. The story that really begins the journey of this work is that in my very young years, age 11, 12, 13, I was anorexic and would, starve, and I was orthorexic. I overexercised and had no idea what was driving me towards these behaviors. Although at the time I was checking out books from the library about anorexia, trying to understand what I was doing, but I still didn't understand all the forces. Looking back as a 51-year-old, I very much understand what dynamics were at play in the different households that I lived in at the time. But it was in college that I started to dive into my tissue in a way that provided me answers and provided me healing. Do you want me to tell the story of?
Yeah, I think so. It's a really nice place to frame the rest of the conversation.
Yes. So by the time I reached college, I was no longer anorexic, but my eating disorder had converted to bulimia. So I started to binge and purge. And this was so intensely ritualistic for me. And I absolutely couldn't stop. I mean, once I started to feel the urges to eat the things I wanted to eat, it was literally an A to B and B to C and C to D and D to E, E to F, F to G, H to I toilet. It was so uncontrollable and so full of shame and guilt and highs and lows, all the stuff. I was a sophomore in college, and my roommate and I used to go to these Pilates classes together. I was in the dance department. I was in the performance studies department. I got to do all the dance classes, and she was pre-med, and pre-med doesn't really get access to the dance classes, but I knew a loophole and she could get in. And so she took Pilates with me, and she would always complain about being sore. And I was never sore. Like, I did all this stuff and I was never sore, but I knew the reason I was never sore was because I couldn't feel my abs. I had no sensation in my core. It was like a black hole. And I knew that it was connected to the fact that I was binging and purging. I knew that the bulimia was part of that vacancy in my center. And so I was doing work study outside of the school at a yoga studio at the time. I was also studying massage at the time, by the way. And I confessed to this yoga teacher that I couldn't feel my abs. And I thought that it was connected to the fact that I was also bulimic. So I was asking for help. I was coming to healing arts. When I felt, I guess, that I trusted a teacher, I'd drop a hint to, just like, somebody help me, please. And she said, well, if you can't feel your abs, you should lay belly down on this prop. And she handed me a hamburger bun shaped beanbag that was full of sand. And this was a tool they used in the Iyengar community at the time, or they still do. It's a prop that I think is for headstands. I don't quite understand how it works, but she said, lay your belly upon it and breathe, just breathe. And so I'd never done that before. And so I did. I laid belly down on this very hard sandbag, and I started to feel more than anyone would ever want to feel. I started to feel absolute ache, agony, pain, what I now know is visceral pain. But the experience of feeling that pain clicked something in my brain. And I also started to feel. I started to have feelings, and I started to emote. I started to cry. I started to feel the experience that I had created in my body through the binging and purging. My organs were finally speaking to me about their pain. And I was finally in a place where I could listen and process. And I knew that I was onto something here. Like, I knew that this was a key for my healing. And so every morning I would wake up very disciplined. I'd roll up a hand towel and I'd wrap it into like a honey bun shape, and I'd move it around my abdomen, and I'd breathe and process. And this was what helped end this cycle of binging and purging. This is the beginning of me moving away from all of the self-hatred that I had and all of the fear of my body, the distrust of my body, and the distrust of the messages of my body, and moved me towards where I am today, where I am now. And we can analyze so many things about that and what those things are, but that is the onset of this body by breath.
Yeah, beautiful. And thank you for sharing that as well. It definitely takes you on the journey with you. So there's one thing I want to, before we go into the kind of the physiological side and the emotional side, there's one thing I want to touch on to like kind of get buy-in from the audience, because there'll be so many people who are listening to this who are kind of like hard chargers. They're that driven personality who is trying to maximize every moment, and they're trying to become ultimately efficient, and they're probably running a coaching service or a business, or they've got some sort of online business going. They want to train hard. They want to have the best relationship possible. And I know that there's like, that's the majority of the audience, those kind of very driven people. And then we kind of logically know, or we've heard that breath work is a fantastic idea, but like, where did the work, like, why should we care about things like our diaphragms, like vagus nerves, like polyvagal theory? Like, why, like, what's the buy-in? Like, what's like, why should we care about that?
Well, it sounds like the audience, and I know this audience well, is really good at going from 0 to 60 and staying in high performance and overproduction and overworking. But you don't get faster, stronger, or better without refilling the tank. You can go from 0 to 60 flawlessly. You're just so greased for that. But can you go from 60 to 0 without falling apart, without crashing? So for a lot of people, going into downregulation or parasympathetic zones is intolerable. The endurance for resilience isn't just go, go, go. The endurance for resilience is being able to have just as much ability to endure stages of profound physiological relaxation as it is to be able to endure profound stages of physiological upregulation. And what I find in a lot of the quote unquote type A folks that I come across is they are managing symptoms by sublimating them, by writing over them, by band-aiding over them, but not necessarily addressing the ability to amplify, let's use some other term, amplify parasympathetic values in their body. So many people who are living in high performance, achievement-driven, high-stress zones may be running from something, like I was, until they encounter a breakdown. And often an injury is what will finally stop them from that constancy of attack, get what you want, go, 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 goal, go, 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 go. So one of the things I found really interesting decades ago, so I came across this information decades ago, and I always had it in the back of my mind. There's this thing called relaxation-induced anxiety. So relaxation-induced anxiety is it's not in the DSM, but it's a phenomenon that is, according to a couple of researchers, may affect up to 63% of people. Think about how averse so many bodies are to meditation. I mean, when you talk to meditators, you're like, wow, that's amazing. That just sounds so amazing. But the adherence to meditation is actually a very small segment of the population. Meditation, for many people, the thought of being in stillness for gobs of time is so discomfortable and discomforting to consider. And then when they do try meditating, that's when the pain arises. That's when panic sets in. That's when they may have nerve rushes or indeed the monkey mind that shows up in the context of meditation. And so there are many people that have profound pain arise when their body starts to go into a parasympathetic state. I wrote Body by Breath for that gigantic segment of population that finds stillness threatening. This is explained really well by the polyvagal theory. But what I offer in Body by Breath are 4 major tools that can help bodies, whether they love meditating or whether they're like meditation averse. And the 4 tools are breathe, roll, move, and then non-sleep deep rest or yoga nidra. And that 4th one, non-sleep deep rest or yoga nidra, really only arises after there is a coherent ability in the body to be able to tolerate this breathe, move, roll concept to help turn down the sympathetic overdrive and help arise the parasympathetic dominant state, a tolerable parasympathetic dominant state that you don't want to flee or fly away from.
Interesting. So I've noticed this. I've been suggesting clients try non-sleep deep rest and like kind of you're finding certain videos for them and that kind of thing. But I have noticed there's some people that are just like, man, that's not for me. That is not my and it is that the exact concept you're talking about there. Where would you start with these people?
Oh, I love these people. Like, these people are my family. Probably was me. Like, luckily I got into yoga nidra, non-sleep deep rest as a teenager. And for me, it's always been like, oh, the balm. It is the balm for me. Like, sometimes I will ask the teachers I've trained, can you just yoga nidra me? Because I am flying off the handle right now. And I want you to talk me through a nidra. So first of all, let's like cut yoga nidra out of the conversation, because that is a stillness-based meditation. Mm-hmm. But these other tools, one of the things I talk about, oh my gosh, there's so much to talk about. You asked about everything in one question. You asked about the diaphragm and the vagus nerve. That's the way
I do. I don't ask simple questions. I ask a widely varying question.
So regarding relaxation-induced anxiety, like how those folks might be able to attenuate their stress response so that they feel pleasantry, they feel a sense of calm arising rather than freak out or fear arising. If a body has some level of stimulation that entertains different areas of the brain, then it can safely distract them from this downslope of relaxation response. And the things that can do that are breath work. Now, by the way, breathing can also induce anxiety in many people, paradoxically. So that also sometimes we have to actually, okay, let's move breathing off the thing. Now we're left with roll and move. So let's go into the roll and move. Because by the way, when you tell some people, just take a deep breath, that is like slapping them in the face. It's such an insult, mm-hmm. and it will actually make them even more aroused. And you know that because you teach breath work. So you see, if people are coming to you for breath work, they've already bought in. But the people that have heard that breath work can help, and then they just try to like watch their breath, and their brain starts to spin, and they start to get highly anxious. For them, breath work needs to be compounded with these other elements that I really specialize in. So the rolling includes self-myofascial release. So the rolling is using pressure against different areas of the body that are known for arousing the relaxation response. So in Body by Breath, I break down 3 different zones of respiration. We can get into those zones of respiration as another question later, but within the zones of respiration, which include the head, neck, and face, shoulder, they also include the thorax, the rib cage area, and then the stuff below the rib cage between pelvis and rib cage. So we have these different zones that govern respiration. But if we can induce pressure into very specific locations within the trunk and the axis, you can actually downshift your autonomic nervous system. You can arouse the vagus, you can downshift the sympathetic, and use your breath as a tool against the pressure that's being given. So what I'm specifically speaking about is I have this one tool called the Cortis ball. I'm holding it up because you're seeing me. I'm sure you know the Cortis ball. It's an inflated, grippy, hollow ball that has a lot of gush, a lot of squish to it, and also a lot of stick to it. And so if you lay this, or you rest your body, just like my teacher coached me to lay down upon basically a concrete sandbag on my guts. We no longer do that. We use something that's compliant, that's very tissue friendly, and all systems of tissue friendly, so that you can get some feedback about where your body is breathing. And then because you have this physical feedback of the tool, it entertains your brain a bit. So you're shifting the breath patterns, but your breath is not going to be quite so self-conscious because you actually have something to push and pull against by using a tool. And so that can be a really helpful tool for folks who have relaxation-induced anxiety or breath-induced anxiety, because now we have something that we can gently wrestle with in a way that ultimately can flip the switch, and then we enter into a relaxation response, and then some other glorious things can happen there. So the rolling often includes movement or motions. So for example, you can lay on your side, have the Cortis ball in the side of your rib cage, and you can start to breathe against the ball, but you can also start to gently undulate your spine. So I actually call these the axial rock. So you can make little tiny undulations like a seahorse would make. And there's just enough of a little bit going on that slow, gentle motion, those oscillations of the head nodding, of the sacrum nodding, induce sort of a cranial sacral dominant activity of the body also, which also helps to promote the relaxation response.
What are the mistakes people make here? I'm guessing seeking the kind of the physical pain because they think it has to be some sort of, I don't know, the most intense massage that they've ever had, that kind of feeling, using the wrong tools, time domain. Like how do people mess this up?
Oh, everything you just said. So rule number 1, it doesn't have to hurt to work. Rule number 2, less can be way more. So if we're used to having feeling to think we're doing something, that's something that needs to be really rearranged. And so one of the ways I explain it in the book, is through a chapter on the fascia and the sensing systems that breaks down proprioception and interoception. So proprioception is our body's knowledge of itself in space or movement. So you know where your elbow is right now. You can probably just close your eyes and you can, oh yeah, I know how much my elbow is bent, right? Or I know how much it's straight. And I know where it is relative to the side or front of my body or the back of my body. You're sitting here talking to me. I doubt your elbow's behind you right now. I could predict that it's probably alongside. Right. And then interoception is our body's ability to physiologically assess itself. I call it physiological listening or subtle sensing. So our interoception travels through a different pathway of the spine, the lateral thalamic pathway, and goes to the insula and a number of other emotional centers of the brain. So our proprioception mostly going to our somatosensory cortex, and our interoception, our more refined physiological sensing, going to other brainstem as well as insula, periaqueductal gray, and so on. So when we are stimulating ourselves in a tender, slow, using our breathing, Another thing, pathways. We're getting some inputs to proprioception and many inputs to interoception. The interoception stuff isn't always going to be like, I feel things. It's going to be, I have feelings, things. And one of the themes of the book is my body thinks and feels. And I tried to bring people into their feeling body rather than overthinking their way through their body, but to allow your body to have a chance to voice its felt experience of itself. And one of the interesting things about the respiratory diaphragm is it is almost devoid of proprioceptors. So it has about, I think, 7, and they're in the crura, they're in the tail. But the whole of the diaphragm, this odd misshapen dome that lines the lower 6 ribs and is a floor for your lungs and heart and is a ceiling for your organs. Like I said, you can tell me where your elbow is, but right now you really can't tell me where your diaphragm is. I mean, you know where it is because I've just described the location, but you can't pinpoint how many centimeters it has descended or how many centimeters it has ascended because it is devoid of feeling. Thank goodness, because if you felt every one of your 22,000 breaths all day, every day, you'd go mad. Even if you're highly interoceptively gifted, the only time you're really feeling the location of your diaphragm, most likely, is when you have spasms of the diaphragm, also known as the hiccups. You can like kind of see it, pulsating inside of the ribs, doing that rhythmical, bizarre thing. And so, helping your high stress, highly motivated clients to want to get to know their diaphragm involves meeting the neighbors of the diaphragm. And they are not met through aggression. They are not met through bullying. They are not met through what I call bulldozing through your body. It is a subtle creep, like trying to sneak up on an ancient octopus hiding inside an undersea cave and going to the octopus for the wisdom. It sounds so corny, but your diaphragm is hidden for a reason. And so we have to really respect that and move ourselves there in a very conscientious, slow way. Sure, you can do huff and puff breathing. You can do all sorts of rapid, accelerated breathing to try to get clarity. And I think that's important too. One should do breathing on all scales. In Body by Breath, I mostly focus on parasympathetic, attuned respiration, and also this sort of hunt for the diaphragm and its fascial relationships to all other structures. And then what that means about your structure and what that means about your ability to, at will, flip the stress switches.
Beautiful. Just a quick favor to ask, my friends. If you could head to wherever you listen to this podcast and leave a very kind review, that will not only help my ego virtually explode, but it will help people just like you find the podcast too, and hopefully help them to their next level. There's so many places that I want to take that. One of them is, I think, an important point to double down on. So I come from previous military background. I've done endurance races and all those kind of things where I've pushed my body to a point where it is painful. And I've learned to also lean into the discomfort of work and the kind of, this is difficult. Okay, so find the difficulty because there's probably value and growth in there. So the feeling of it doesn't have to hurt to work. It's like it comes as an obvious lesson, but one that's hard to embody too. Yeah. So I just really wanted to double down on that and probably go into why that's the case.
Oh, I really feel for you, Tom. I mean, I know I got grounded if I got B's. Mm-hmm. And so I was, I graduated number 1 in my class out of, 1,000 people in high school. Mm-hmm. And then when I got to college, I had full-blown eating disorder, bulimia, the whole bit, and had to find my way back. Look, I still have those tendencies. I still want to just go, blinders on. And I have to force myself to go into what I call the 5 Ps of the parasympathetic nervous system to downshift, restore, find my way, and face my fears instead of just running with them at full speed, especially if that's been your training and your conditioning. So it's very, very complex. I'm not saying any of this is like, oh, you can just do this. When you just do this, you will actually start to feel some of what you're feeling might be immediately aversion. Like, oh, this isn't for me. I don't like this slow movement. I don't like, and that's valuable. That is hurting to working. Do you know what I mean? Feeling those negative feelings about the dislike of it is information. I remember, I studied yoga for decades before I found my way out of yoga. So there's a whole other longer story. But one of the precepts in the yogic philosophies, and I don't have the Sanskrit anymore, so I'm paraphrasing, but is, look at what your aversions are, because there is gold there, right? So for you, it's like, great, I see unpleasantness there. But it's not like the kind of pain of grit, of like, fatiguing muscles. It will be fatiguing because you're going to unwind and unroll all of the tension that has been propelling you forward, right? Mm-hmm. And so that comes with, honestly, it comes with nausea, it comes with tears, it comes with processing the slowdown. So, the nervous system is very interesting. I have like 1,000th of an understanding of the nervous system in general. I'm not a neurologist. I'm a fascia person, but I can talk to you about the different sensory neurons in the fascial tissue and let you know that at different pressure gradients, at different angles, and at different depths, we can arouse information from these sensory neurons to our brain. And this common experience of it has to hurt to work or no pain, no gain doesn't apply when we're trying to improve the cellular and fluid environment of our fascial tissues. And so some tissues respond to tender stroking touch. I mean, you have all these sensory receptors in your skin that respond to licking and stroke, even at a certain rate. So when we stroke the skin, and right now you see I'm doing about, oh goodness, what is the pace? It's 4 seconds per 1.5 centimeters, I believe, and that is the touch of how you're stroking a baby, is the pace that arouses the tactile C fibers and actually improves immune response. Now, if I go at a deeper depth and I start to actually move the fatty tissue, and I start to create I feel a little bit of a skin lock, but I also feel this interesting stretch deep to my skin. Then I enter into the superficial fascia zone. In the superficial fascia zone, there are abundant Ruffini endings. Now, Ruffini endings are sensory neurons that respond to shear forces. So that is a traction force, but I don't need to even go very deep to get this traction force. I'm getting this traction force just by pressing in, like maybe this is the weight of like a 0.5 pound of pressure and then shifting my finger. You can't see me doing this because we're not really videoing, or maybe we are, but it's just press in and then move the tissue to the side. So these Ruffini endings respond to shear pressure. And when they are excited in this manner, they do two things for the brain. One, they give the brain a sense of place. So it's a proprioceptive sensory neuron, but they also decrease sympathetic tone. So just this light pressure, I can decrease sympathetic tone in the muscles locally to that because of the feedback loop of the sensory to motor relay there. And then I can explore that at different depths, and I can find other sensory neurons, Pacini corpuscles, muscle spindles, Golgi tendons, and then the zillions, I'll say zillions, it's not the correct term, but there's 250 million sensory neurons in your fascial tissues. And most of these are unclassified free nerve endings. They don't necessarily know what all of the sensory neurons are doing, because there aren't tests for them. But please note that your fascial tissues are also a cell estuary. You have abundant different types of cells that live in your fascial tissues throughout your body, including the resident cells of the fibroblasts that produce the collagen and elastin. Another newly discovered cell called the fasciocyte. The fasciocytes are the ones that spurt out hyaluronan. That's the grease that allows your fascial tissues to move. Or sometimes if they're pissed off, they'll spurt out too much grease. And that too much grease ends up creating stickiness and stiffness and creating agglomerations. And the more you just try to roll against an agglomerated tissue, you arouse an entire cascade of inflammation. Some of that inflammation may be beneficial, but if you're really trying to go for the hurt, you're probably creating more hurt, more wounding. And then the cycle will repeat itself. The fibroblasts will come in and they'll say, oh man, I got to stabilize this area. I'm going to add more collagen, more elastin, and it's going to increase the stiffness, continue to increase the stiffness over time. And so you're just losing movement over time. You're not gaining movement. So these slower processes, the less can be way more, doesn't have to hurt to work, are oftentimes the thing that restores the fluff of the environment, the loft of the environment, instead of creating even more glue, even more stiffness. So I hope that is helpful to inspire you and some of your colleagues, or not call your listeners, to think, well, I wonder if I apply a tender touch ball rather than a hard ball. I wonder if I apply gentle pressure rather than hard pressure, if that is going to light up parts of my brain that are just so used to being bypassed. I want to use all of my brain. I want to use all the parts of my body and not continue to disavow the tender parts of me.
I love the way you use the reframe of kind of, well, this is still exploring discomfort, just in a different kind of way that you're used to, because that really kind of gets that part. You go, okay, I can still pretend to be this tough version of me, but I can still get it. And actually, you're good friends, or you've previously been good friends with Kelly Starrett, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So I've been following Kelly for ages, and that's how I first kind of discovered your work. And I've seen the shift in the way that he's approaching his soft tissue work. And I think that there's a distinctive point when he seems to become more infected by your work. In a positive way. Infected is probably the wrong word there.
Contagion.
Yeah, contagious in the most positive way possible. And yeah, you can see that coming through. So I think people used to think that was just smash yourself as hard as possible, but that's developed too, and that's really nice to see.
Well, Kelly is my brother, Juliet, his wife. I've a long relationship, and Kelly understands his audience. He understands his demographic. Yeah. And we all have to use our lingo to try to reach the ears and eyes and tissues of the people we're communicating to. I think I came from the yoga space. I came from the mind-body space, which is more used to kind of that yummy feeling, that's you'll hear people say, oh, it's so yummy, right? And in the CrossFit space, it's like smash, beast, burn, annihilate, and so there are just different lingo camps. But ultimately, Kelly and I are trying to reach the most people that we possibly can and empower them to be their own first line of self-care healthcare, because so much can be taken care of on your own without the dependence of a clinician to constantly treat you or to tell you what you're feeling or experiencing. If you can be your own diagnostician through self-knowledge, and you can get that self-knowledge through rolling, it's just incredible, the empowerment that gives you when you're going in to meet with a clinician who, you might be dealing with some very serious stuff, but there are so many things that you can do on your own. And so Kelly and I understand that collaborative mission, and we know who our quote unquote audiences are. Majority of people also, or a big portion of the people that work with me, are also people in a lot of pain. His people too are in a lot of pain. And ultimately, you've got to figure out, each individual has to figure out their own pain pressure threshold and being able to attenuate their responses to pain, stretch, pressure, and all of that in terms of applying the application as best practice for them. So I try so many different things with my clients, with my students, but I do use soft tools. The evidence on soft tools is, for me, compelling enough to stick with soft tools on a general basis. If I'm in a space where there are nothing but hard tools, I know how to attenuate a person's relationship to gravity so that they're not inducing too much traction on a joint, or are going to create even further irritation or discomfort or displacement. So I think, I love to talk as a technician about the tools and the application. But just so you know, we both, I'm speaking for Kelly and myself. I think I know him well enough to say it. Like, we are driven by many of the same instincts to just try to help people help themselves.
Yeah, you can see that. You can 100% see that. You spoke earlier about the 5 Ps. Do you mind going through those one by one? Actually, let's start off with why they're important and what they're used for. And then if we go through them one by one quickly about how do we apply these? Okay.
We still haven't talked about the diaphragm at length.
Okay.
I just want to put that on the table.
Okay, we can come back to the diaphragm.
Okay.
Or which would you rather go for first, the diaphragm or the 5 Ps?
Well, maybe we can talk about the zones of respiration.
Great. Cool.
As it relates to the diaphragm. Yep. I think that's a really good frame.
Yep.
So the book, and I hinted at this earlier, the book outlines 3 zones of respiration. And the 3 zones of respiration are very simple, I think, to get an understanding of basic respiratory mechanics, but they also give you insight into where you might want to first focus on your own self-myofascial release or self-massage work. So the zones of respiration are as follows. I already mentioned that the diaphragm lives inside the lower 6 ribs. Diaphragm also has these 2 tails that attach to the lumbar spine. They're called crura. So the diaphragm's range of attachment is extremely global in the torso. In quiet breathing or in calm breathing, your diaphragm will contract downwards. So it's in its dome shape. And when the body is in its calmest state, the diaphragm contracts downward, and everything below the diaphragm, and that's your waist, your belly, your low back, your pelvic floor, should expand a bit. I call this zone 1 or zone 1 breathing. In zone 1 breathing, we're really focused on the stuff below the rib cage and feeling the experience of this elasticity of the gut area swelling on inhale and then deflating on exhale. So we want to have a well-moving zone 1. Sometimes we don't have a well-moving zone 1 because we maybe have scar tissue there from a C-section or an intra-abdominal surgery, low back surgery, pelvic surgery, or maybe we wear really tight clothing, or maybe we just pull it in all the time because we want to look thin. And so we're holding tension in our transversus abdominals to try to pull it in. That's a very common habit. So zone 1 breathing is our most parasympathetic style of breathing. And we go into zone 2. Zone 2 is the thorax, it's the rib cage. So in zone 2, our diaphragm collaborates with the intercostals to create an upward rotation on inhale. You see the bones of the rib cage swelling up and open like bony fish gills. And then on exhale, they'll settle back down. And so we want to have a really well-moving zone 2, especially if we need to brace our zone 1 for athletic output or for moving a sofa across the floor, right? You want to have a braced zone 1 if you're lifting a barbell. I mean, you don't want your lumbar spine and sacroiliac joints to just get pulled apart because you're not bracing well. So zone 2 is a really important room for breathing that allows us to really control our movement, especially our athletic output. When we're in zone 2, we're more sympathetic. So we say that zone 2 breathing is sympathetic zone of excitement, energy, and so on. But if you only breathe zone 2 because some of the aforementioned zone 1 stuff is happening for you, like you want to look thin all the time, or you've got a gigantic scar from a kidney transplant, or partial liver removal or gallbladder surgery. If we're chronically breathing zone 2, we'll often deflect the breathing even higher than zone 2 into zone 3. And zone 3 breathing is breathing that occurs in the most accessory muscles of respiration, which are head, neck, jaw, upper shoulder muscles. And you'll see zone 3 breathing when somebody goes into a gasp or fright or even delight. And usually a zone 3 breath is accompanied by an open jaw. So often it's a mouth breath, and it's a very quick flood of air into the uppermost zone of the lung lobes, and gives us it's, by the way, this is in collaboration with a flood of adrenaline and cortisol to the system. This is our HPA axis going into a big leap, big escalation, but it's not a tenable long-term breathing strategy. Because if we're breathing mostly in our jaw, neck, and shoulders, we're going to end up with a lot of neck and jaw pain. It's just not sustainable. My mother is asthmatic. Both my grandmothers died from COPD or emphysema related complications. And it's just deleterious for the health of so many systems of the body, of course, including your lungs. So we want to really work at being more of a balance between zone 1, zone 2 breathers for the majority of our days and nights. And of course, at night, we definitely want to be a zone 1 breather, not a zone 2 type breather. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a basic outline of the zones of respiration. And I've heard from a lot of different practitioners that it's been very helpful for them to use that model in terms of creating programming for their clients. And it really does help give people command of their wind instrument. Like you can literally see where the stresses build up in the system. The book focuses on rollouts in each of these zones, and also rollouts that actually apply pressure, mechanical pressure to the vagus nerve, which also, when it's done correctly, should create a very wonderful drop in the heart rate and a slowing down of the respiratory rate and enter you into deep calm. So the zones of respiration are very helpful to locate and to learn. And that does help to leapfrog us into the 5 Ps of parasympathetic nervous system. Perfect. Unless you have a question about
you're doing the hosting for me. This is fantastic. So talk to me about the 5 Ps. I'm going to sit back.
Do you have any questions about the zones of respiration?
I want to get to the 5 Ps because I think that's really nice, and it's super applicable. And people can really take that and apply that, and kind of and really I found huge improvement from it. So I think we can apply that to others.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, the 5 Ps are the big takeaway from the book. They're so important. I outlined at the beginning of the book and in the middle of the book, because it really is the programming concept. And I think that if you or any of the coaches that listen to you can even get 3 of the 5 Ps into some of the practices that they offer to their clients will experience a very big shift in allowing their parasympathetic nervous system to become more facile and strengthen its ability to have its rule and role in the body. So the 5 Ps are: 1, the first P is perspective. Perspective is all about mindset. And so that is a psychological perspective that allows you to be a gracious host to the embodiment experience that the rest of the Ps will offer. And also, I just heard on Andrew Huberman's podcast. I love the Huberman podcast.
You and I both.
It's fantastic. I'm sure a lot of your listeners do too, but he just did an entire episode on mindset. And I was like, oh my God, this is one of my 5 Ps. Thank you for this gift, Andrew. So it was really great. But what it is a top-down hosting opportunity. And in the book, I have more than 24 of these mindsets written out for you. But the one I work with now, the one that has been helping me as I go on this book tour and deal with, the intensity of ratcheting up my life to this next level author, is all of me is welcome here. All of me is welcome here. That helps me welcome my anxiety body when I'm having interviews like this, or knowing that I just dropped my kid off. He just had surgery yesterday. He had 4 teeth removed. He's at school. I know he's playing basketball when he shouldn't. But all of me is welcome here. I'm not going to just tamp down the fact that I feel uneasy because we're having this interaction. Like the more I continue to punish myself for anxiety being a part of my body, the more it will surprise me and take over. So all of me is welcome here. The good parts, the parts that I'm less comfortable with, right? But some other suggestions, like during the pandemic, one of my sankalpas, or excuse me, my mindset that I worked with was, I am a safe place. I am a safe place. And that really helped me with my kids, because I was homeschooling them, as we all were in those initial months. So you've got to find the mindset, the perspective that for you is a bit aspirational for your spirit, is a bit aspirational for how you want to be behaving in the world. So there's lots of ways you can frame them, and they're all over the book. Here's one that's helpful. I embody my body. I embody my body. Like nobody else can embody body. So we've got the first P is perspective. The second P is place. In order for your parasympathetic nervous system to come online, your body has to feel that the place is safe. It's a place that brings you peace. Now, there's not always going to be a sanctuary available to you. So sometimes you have to imagine or imagineer that the place is safe, even when it is unsteady, even when you're in turbulence on the airplane. I work with a lot of people who have fled from horrible geopolitical crises, refugees, and so on. They never feel safe in their body. So sometimes that is not always an attainable thing, but some of the other P's can help with it. So number one is perspective. Number two is place. If you have a safe place in your home, your bathroom, or wherever, your bed, wherever it is, find your safe place and make it so. The third P is position. In terms of allowing your parasympathetic nervous system to show up for you, the easiest way to get the relaxation response is to recline. So get grounded, get close to the floor, or recline yourself. And if you really want to maximize parasympathetic dominance, give yourself a gentle slope. So you even raise your pelvis higher than the heart, higher than the head. Like I put my pelvis on a gorgeous ball or on a bolster or on a yoga block or on a couple of Body by Breath books, which are very thick, so that you have this gentle slope in your body. And this gentle slope initiates what's known as the baroreceptor reflex. And the baroreceptor reflex, in short shrift, is a vagal response to the amount of blood flooding the carotid arteries in the side of your neck. Your brain does not want more blood than it needs. And so when those pressure sensors in the side of your neck sense that too much blood is coming its way, there's a quick feedback loop with the brainstem and the vagus nerve, and the vagus will tell the heart rate to slow down. It'll tell the breath pace to slow down. And so you get free relaxation response by reclining, or even better, by creating a gentle slope. So we've got perspective, place, position. The fourth P, pace of breath. So now we come to the breath. Wow, it took a while just to get to the breath, right? These things can all happen at the same time, by the way, but I'm isolating them. So the pace of breath, ultimately slow breathing, and breathing that expands the duration of exhale relative to inhale. So in general, breaths that take a longer phase of exhalation compared to inhalation are more relaxing. Now, there are some other novel breath strategies that can flip that around, but for the just general sauce, make your exhales longer than your inhales. And I will add, since now you all know the 3 zones of respiration, make sure that you're illuminating zones 1 and 2. You're doing that abdominal thoracic stuff, not the head, neck, and face breathing, right? We're not sucking air through our mouth and using our neck muscles to get air in. So we've got 4 P's: perspective, place, position, pace of breath. The 5th P, palpation. Palpation has to do with the pressure, there's a 6th P, of the different role model balls that are throughout the book, or different soft self-myofascial release tools that can influence your body's position relative to some of these great pressure zones that illuminate parasympathetic dominant arousals based on the pressure. And those are outlined in the book.
Thank you so much. super, super beneficial. I have, I think, 3 questions out of 17 to 20. You'll say
We can do a few more.
So
I'll answer
actually,
shorter.
I've got one. No, I was saying that is a fantastic point. That's good because there's so much depth that we've been through, and I think that's exactly what we're looking for here. We're looking for depth, and we're looking for applicability, and that's exactly what you provide. So thank you so much. There's a couple of questions on a very, very selfish level. First one of these is how and when should we use arousal breathing?
Oh, a great question. So I do have I have a couple of arousal breaths in there, and I do have one hyperventilation breathing exercise. It also happens to be the only exercise with a half a page of warnings ahead of it.
Yeah.
So those should be taken very seriously. As you know, it could be the difference between life and death for some people. So it's just absolutely heart-shattering to hear that for some people, breath practice ends up being fatal. So which is, I'm here on the other end of the spectrum. I don't teach that mode of breathing. I teach this recuperative, recovery-based work. Arousal breathing can be very helpful if you are finding that you are extremely low energy, but you need to be productive. I think it's really helpful for me when I'm in the car and I start to drift off. For me, sitting stillness can make me go to sleep. So if I'm not playing loud music and singing, if I'm not slapping my leg, sometimes I'll do arousal breathing to just adjust the circuit while I'm breathing. So it's for when you need to make sure that you are attentive and conscious. And those can also be life or death situations.
Nice. And when should we absolutely stay clear of arousal breathing? And I can put a little caveat in there because
that's more your space. That's more your space.
I can read your caveats in the book and your explanations in the book of when we shouldn't use it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who are in the intense training space, they're already getting arousal breathing by doing HIIT or doing Rux or heavy lifts. They're already getting arousal breathing as a byproduct of intense training. And so I think the recovery-based breathing, the relaxation response breathing is what's missing in the overall breath diet. And so that would be my response to that. I think maybe if you're bearing witness to your breathing while you're working out, you're probably already doing arousal breathing, and you may not need to isolate it and train it separately.
Beautiful. Where can people find out a little bit more about you? Where can people buy your book? Like I got it from Amazon, so I'm assuming that most people can. But where's the best place to purchase your book?
Yes, get it from Amazon. I know that it is also on Black. There's a international retailer, Black. Please show up. Oh boy.
Sorry, I can put in.
Some people in the EU were having a hard time getting it on Amazon because their Amazon doesn't sell it. But maybe you can put in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes. I'll stick it in the intro.
I'll find it in my inbox where that
I'll record the intro afterwards. And
Amazon Worldwide, Barnes and Noble for all my people in the US. I've seen it on Target, Walmart. Like I see it everywhere. It's published by Penguin Random House. So really, wherever people carry Penguin Random House, they can always get Body by Breath as well as the role model. And then my website's tuneupfitness.com. I have new classes every week in an online classroom called Move, Breathe, Roll. So if you're interested in lots and lots of accessible online classes that detail much of what Tom and I have talked about, but also how to help your shoulder, how to help your foot, how to help your hip, lots of classes covering that. And then there are specialty programs. You mentioned my friend Kelly Starrett. We have a program on my website that's called Treat While You Train. We've also got a program with the fascia kingpin, Tom Myers, called Rolling Along the Anatomy Trains. Also my friend, Katie Bowman of Nutritious Movement. She and I have a program called Walking Well. And then I just released a HIIT program called Roll Into HIIT with my friend, Doc Jennifer Brony. And all these live on our platform. And then I teach online classes. I teach online courses in Body by Breath. I also teach in person Body by Breath. So you can find all that on the website, as well as Role Model, and lots of upcoming events. So check it out. Not in the UK, but maybe next summer.
Okay, I'll hold you to that.
Oh, I'd love it. I'd love it. I just got invited by Spain. So I'm like, well, let's make it all happen.
It's only a short hop over the pond from there.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for your time.